The Genius, the smaller sibling of the Artillery3D Sidewinder X. It's a low-priced machine boasting an amazing set of features. And I think what we need to do is dive a little deeper and find out if the Genius makes the grade. Right here on 3D Printing Nerd. Welcome back. So if this machine, the Genius, looks familiar, it's because, like I said before, it's just a sized-down version of the Sidewinder X1. They have changed a few things, such as adding injection-molded plastic around parts of the machine, most notably at the top here, where this metal extrusion is replaced with plastic pieces. They've also changed out the spool holder, done a few other things, but essentially, if you know the Sidewinder X1, you know this because it's essentially the smaller version of itself. So there you go. The print volume on this machine has 220 on the X, 220 on the Y, and 250 on the Z or Z. I find that print volume to be ample and big enough to print most of the things that I want to print and most of the things that I did print. Of course, this isn't perfect for everyone, but at almost 10 inches in Z and a little over 8 on X and Y, this should be big enough for most things that people want to print. Like the Sidewinder X1, the extruder is a Titan-style extruder right here, which makes it a good candidate for printing not just rigid materials, but semi-flexible materials as well. The hot end features an E3D Volcano-style hot end. E3D Volcano compatible might be a better way to say it. It is PTFE lined though, which means you do have to take into consideration the temperature that this can achieve. You might want to keep it around 240 to 250 C because of that PTFE inside, but this means PLA, ABS, PETG, and flexible materials are perfect for this machine. This does mean higher temp materials like PCs and nylons are probably something you would need to print with a different printer. The bed is AC heated and it gets up to temperatures really quick. It is a glass bed and it has a covering on it. It's some sort of ultra base like covering. It held onto PLA just great at 60C. At 80C, it was mostly holding on to PETG, but I found the hold to not be as good as it was when holding on to PLA. Most of my printing was PLA, and so I didn't have any problems with that. But if this machine is for you and you want to print a lot of PLA, you might have to take that into consideration. The bed is interesting because when you use isopropyl alcohol to wipe it down and clean it off, a little bit of golden brown residue resides on the paper towel that you use. I don't know if that's the ultra base like material coming off or just golden tears from the machine, but either way, that does happen and you should probably know about it. It has large leveling knobs on all four corners and they are handy because I did find that I had to re-level the bed quite often. So when the bed hits 60C for PLA, it's dialed in, it's great. When I move the bed to 80C to print PETG, then the bed's thermal expansion gets in the way and it's either too close or too far away from the nozzle depending on which way you're swinging the temperature. The knobs are great for adjusting and they make it easy. Reaching around to the back knobs is a little bit more difficult, but I mean, I've played with machines that make it a lot harder. One of the things though that I found deficient is the placement of the Z limit switch right here. And I wanted to move it. So this is held with a screw right here into a drilled hole through the extrusion. There's no way to move it up or down. And this is important because what I wanted to do was get the bed closer to the nozzle, but not have the springs as uncompressed as they were. As it stands, I had to almost unscrew a couple corners just to get that bed closer to the nozzle. And being able to move the limit switch would have made that easier because I could have lowered this, which meant the nozzle could come lower and I wouldn't have to uncompress or nearly unscrew everything on the bed. So take that into consideration if you do have this machine and you find that you are approaching the limits of the bed springs, you can always add some washers to try and compress those a little bit more. The better option would be if Artillery made the Z limit switch movable. Operating the machine is actually fairly easy. It has a color touchscreen right up front, and it was able to take all my pokes and my prods, no problem. Nothing missed. It was great because Every time I had to touch the screen to select something, I was confident that it would take that touch, and it did, which is great. Next to that right here is a USB port and a micro SD slot. My usage of this machine for adding G-code was via the USB stick, and this was given to me in the box. This also contained a Prusa slicer config bundle for the machine, but I think what they did is just copied over the same INI file for the Sidewinder X1, because when I loaded it into Prusa slicer, it gave bed dimensions for the X1. This is smaller, and by defining the bed as 220 by 220 and then defining the max height as 250 is all I needed to do, and then that was good to go.
First try.
Movements on this machine are super duper quiet, like astonishingly quiet. Like, I'm surprised at how quiet this is. Quiet. The stepper drivers they're using are fantastic. The motor noise is completely minimal, and the loudest thing on this machine is this fan right here when it kicks in. So, I mean, that's really cool. Filament fan's not on yet, but it's super quiet. And there's the fan. I like a low-cost machine that's able to use some quality components, because it means that you're given a very deluxe experience. And when printing with this, once you have it all dialed in and printing all the things, it's quiet and it won't interrupt you if you're in the same room. Ready? Get her! And finally, one of the things they changed from the X1 is the spool holder. I remember I complained about that, and people notably saw that and told me you could do all sorts of different things to make it work, but that's not the point of a review. A review is meant for me to give my opinions on how a manufacturer is doing something. And in this case, the manufacturer did something incredibly good. Here, let me show you. So on the back right here is a thumb screw. And if I loosen that, then this side of the spool holder, I guess I gotta loosen it a little bit more. There we go. This side of the spool holder can not pivot, slide. It can slide on top of the injection molded plastic, and it can accommodate a spool from this size to this size. Obviously, if you're running a spool larger than this, or if you're running a spool smaller than this isn't something that the spool holder can accommodate. But at that point, you can try to implement some of the fixes that people told me to do to the X1, such as printing or getting tubes that go across these bearings here, making rollers, or you can do what I did back at my house, and I used a closet clothing rod up against some attachments on the wall, and I can just load spools up there and I can feed them through. One of the things though that make this great is the filament runout sensor right here. It's just a little dangle dongle right there. It plugs in, easy to use. Filament goes through, and once it goes through, it flips a switch, and that switch is telling the machine that filament is loaded. As filament is being drawn out and it runs out, it'll come out, the switch will click, and the machine will say, oh crap, I'm out of filament. Hey, pause the machine, pause the print, and then alert the user. Let the user know that I'm out of filament. So it beeps a bunch. And then once you place filament back in, prime the nozzle and hit resume, you are good to go. And it worked out just fine. We'll get into that. Prints from this machine came out pretty great. I mean, there was very minimal tweaking and slicer settings to get this working. In fact, let's move the machine over to the side and let's take a look at what we printed. First, let's start with the story. This cube, this little test cube right here, it has the Artillery3D logo right on the top. It's preloaded on the USB stick, and it's meant to just give you an idea of what the printer can do. I loaded in some Protopasta HTPLA, old stuff that I was moved over to the studio here, and it worked. Not only did it work, it did a fantastic job. Fantastic job. Look at that. Look at that. It's just great. It's great. So this here is my example of what the machine can do and what I tried to get back to. Just remember that. So we're going to put it right here as the little piece that could. So then what I did here at the office is I loaded up that slicer config file from the USB stick, and I changed the print dimensions to be 220, 220, 250 on the Z. And then it was around Christmas time, and someone from Twitter, I can't remember who it was, Sean. We'll have to find out who it was, but they made this Grinch model. And look at that. It's glorious. I mean, it's obviously, if you print something with glitter in it, it's going to hide some of the imperfections, but if I look at it up close with my very own eyeballs, it's fantastic. It looks wonderful. It is a great, great model. Right here, I mean, you look at that curve. That's organic. Look at that. It's just, I was rubbing the Grinch's back. It was weird. But then look at the eyeballs. The eyeballs are smooth. The beard and the hat, and it worked great. This was sliced at 0.2, 0.2, and it turned out fantastic. This also was me testing something. I said, wait a minute, there's a filament detection sensor on here. Snip. And I snipped it right there, and I watched it as it pulled through. It got to this point, it paused the machine and said, help, help, I need more filament. And I said, I will rescue you. And I loaded more protopasta filament in, and this is the result. Like, it was sitting right over here, and I went home, and I came back, and it looked like this. And I was just stoked. I was like, wow, this is great. This is great. And so I'm just happy that I printed this. Like, it looks so good. Okay, brought the machine. Well, wait, almost forgot. These are dried sourdough bites. And when David was up here, and Sean, David, and I filmed our little end of year, end of decade favorite episode, we got snacks. Snacks are imperative. You have to have snacks. I opened this, and I was like, crap, I'm not at home. I don't have a chip clip. Wait a minute. Ben Heckendorn, you know him as Ben Heck, designed this chip clip and put it on Thingiverse back in 2014. So what I did is I printed it. And Sean, it looks great.
It does. It looks great, and it works very well.
Snacks secured. That's a practical print right there. So like I said, that cube there, that was something that I wanted to get back to. I loaded up some really old generic PLA filament that I had, and I thought, okay, let's print it out with different filament, because protopasta I consider to be, their HTPLA is high quality stuff. I loaded up some generic stuff, and it didn't come out so good. Can you see the weirdness?
Yeah,
on
the waviness?
The waviness and the weirdness? Yeah, I was not happy with that. I thought, crap, what's going on? So then I used the filament runout sensor, and I loaded in some purple filament. And it turned out better. It turned out better, and I thought, okay, so we're on the right track. So let's print a Benchy. I started printing it in that purple, and it looked great. And I thought, let's give that tan filament one more shot, that crappy old generic tan filament, one more shot. And can you see the waviness on the bow?
I sure can.
Not good. So after that was done, I loaded in the purple, and I did a cube, one of their tests, and I think that turned out great. What do you think?
Much better.
Much better. Much, much better. And obviously, the Benchy did good too. Look at that.
There it is.
It looked good. And just to be safe, I did a Chuck Hellebuck pawn. I think that turned out good. You can see that there is a pretty pronounced seam there. A seam is something that you can control via slicer settings. And I did my best to try and solve all of the slicer settings that I needed to, eventually landing from these Chep cubes to this cube. And it really wasn't much of a deviation there. So then I thought, okay, we should probably print a couple more things. Why not? Well, Joel is slippery. There's many Joel. Obviously, it's not perfect, but I think it did a fantastic job given the minimal amount of time that I did in tweaking slicer settings. Look at that. And more importantly, I mean, that's good, right?
It's a good Joel crotch.
That's a good Joel, mini Joel crotch.
Mini Joel crotch.
Mini Joel crotch, yeah. Mini Joel crotch. This is the Flowistic fabric, or I think it's called the fabric, right? It's like a chainmail.
It's basically
chainmail,
yeah.
This is a small section of it, and I was able to print it on this machine, and it turned out great. And I didn't have to break anything away. This is a function of your layer height set correctly and your extrusion parameters, for the most part, set correctly, because all of these small little contact points all have to exist on the build plate at once. And if they touch each other, then you have to kind of break them away once you pull this model from the bed. If they're not touching each other, you have to make sure that they adhere to the bed well enough, else something is going to lift off. So I had a perfect storm occur, and the the chainmail, the fabric. It looked great. I mean, it looks good, right?
It proves the point, right? Like it's
It
super
does.
easy to move around. Nothing's catching.
Yeah.
It's great.
I thought I should print something cool, and so this might look familiar to people. Let's put it together. I mean, right? This is multiple pieces. Everything should fit. This is the trash walker. The main part was to see if these go in, and it looks like they go in. No problem. How do the feet go? Is it like that? I think it's like that. Is it like that?
Maybe. Did you break it? You
Yeah, I broke it. Luckily, we have ourselves a trash walker. Can't believe I broke it. But
I can.
the pieces look good. There's a little bit of stringing on them, but I mean, for the most part, this turned out okay. I think that was good. This is all PLA though. People are gonna say, did you print something besides PLA? And I did. This is PETG, right? Not too bad. It's the same demo cube. What I did is once it started printing, I adjusted temperature of the bed and temperature of the nozzle from the touch screen, and then it completed it. And I think it did a pretty decent job knowing that all I did was adjust temperatures. Oh, and this is PETG too. Just wanted to show that we could do that. There we go. I don't know, gray or purple? That's a dumb question for you, isn't it?
Yes. Oh, it's purple. There you go. Nope.
No. People are gonna ask, did you print flexibles? And I kind of did. I couldn't find a lot of my TPU, but I do have this. This is EVA foam. It is a semi-flexible material. It is a EVA foam copolymer. It is from Artillery3D, and I'm trying to print more of this because I put this out on Twitter, and a lot of people are very, very interested in it. But if you look at that. I mean, it's squishy.
Got a little bit of give there.
It's kind of big. Once you feel it, you're like, whoa, that's foam. It feels weird. But anyway, was able to do it. No problem. Finally, I had my friend Virginia Schutte in town, and she helped. You may have seen her on the FANMAIL Friday. She was able to do the introduction, let you know it's back. But we also had to print some keychains for her kids because a mom cannot go back home empty-handed from a business trip. And so we were able to print out a couple little keychains. Have a look. Hi, Virginia.
Hi!
Okay, what do you got?
I have a turtle and a unicorn, and they are both keychains.
They look really great, and those are for your kids, right?
Yes.
Okay.
My youngest likes turtles, my oldest likes unicorns.
And we printed these on what's known as the Artillery3D GENIUS, and it's currently in for review. This is the machine right here. What do you think about how easy it was for us to get these printed?
I thought it was pretty easy. I know basically nothing about 3D printing, which means I don't have a lot to compare it to, but I think that if I were in the market for a 3D printer, I would want something where I could click and then let it go and know that it's gonna come out 10 to 30 minutes later without any maintenance at all. These had no strings. They just went on their own. There was nothing we had to do to them. They just came out looking like this in the end, which I think is pretty good.
They actually look really, really good. I was impressed with them. Obviously, I've done some test prints with the machine, but this was a lot of fun because it's actually a real world case where someone comes by and you want to print something for them to take home to their loved ones. And we were able to do that. So cool. Well, I hope your kids like it.
They will love them. Thank you very much. And thanks to Artillery.
Wow. I think what our, oh, you know what? How about that? Bring it back into, there we go.
It's fine. I
Some
wasn't
stuff.
getting a B-roll shot. It's fine. It's fine.
All B-roll should just be me eating these in the background.
Yes.
I think Artillery3D has a winner on their hands. The Genius can be found in some places for $299 US. That's a fantastic price for what this 3D printer is able to deliver. No machine, it's not perfect, and no machine is, obviously, but I think that if you like to tinker a little bit, you like to play around with slicer settings, you don't mind the bed level inconsistencies, I think it's for you. I think it would make a great addition to your home, your garage, or your makerspace. Artillery3D sent this Genius 3D printer to me for review, and all opinions expressed in this review are my own, and I have not been compensated for them in any way. With that out of the way, I think we're at the end of the episode. Thanks for watching. If you made it this far, you're awesome. Don't forget, you can support us and what we do via Patreon or now via Floatplane. Links are in the description down below. Don't forget to hug each other more, and I'll see you after the 5. As always, high five.